Hi flute players. In this video I'm going to go over an essential skill that's needed to be a great and long-lasting freelancer that is often overlooked, and that is the skill of being organized and managing your own schedule. It seems like just a basic life skill, and it is, but it's so essential to being a good freelancer because for many reasons, but you're the only one managing yourself. You're like project manager of your life. One of the reasons that as a freelancer, your schedule is going to be difficult to manage is that it's going to be multi-layered and constantly shifting. And just as an example, I'm going to go over what my typical schedule layers were back in the day when I was freelancing all the time in Chicago. And just so you get like a little window into the world of freelancing and what it's really like. So I would say my layers of schedule were, and it's much more complicated than this, but just so you get kind of a basic idea of how I approached it, was my base level, like fixed schedule was I was teaching a music appreciation class, music history class at a community college. So that's a fixed schedule. I had 3 classes a semester. They're scheduled for me, I have to be there. Then on top of that would be semi-fixed. So that would be things like regional orchestras I was a member of, where again, the season is set. I put in the season schedule and see what the conflicts are, and then, sub out of the things I need to sub out of and whatnot. Also, I had a Starbucks job for a long time while I was freelancing a ton, which I'm not even sure looking back how I even did that. But so I would consider that semi-fixed. You're scheduled for the week, probably, if I remember correctly, you're scheduled for the week. And it's semi-fixed in that I could get out of stuff if I needed to. I just had to find my own sub. On top of that is stuff that's totally movable. And I would consider that to be students. Nowadays, it would be things like creating content or online students or anything you're doing online that you can do kind of whenever you have time. But for me, during this time would be students, totally movable. Also, then on top of that, the final layer maybe are gigs that just come up through the year. And then if you really want to take them, you schedule it in, but you're gonna have a conflict with something. So that's just sort of a generalized explanation of how things are constantly shifting in your schedule. You have some things that are sort of fixed, semi-fixed, students, along comes a gig, everything comes unraveled with your schedule, and you only need to keep track of it, very good track of it, because you have so many things going on as a freelancer. You're kind of going in all directions, and when those schedules conflict, you have to be very, very organized to keep track of the conflicts and to keep track of how you are going to reschedule everything. And again, it always comes back to you are rescheduling. It's not some personnel manager or your boss at regular day job scheduling things for you. It's you keeping track of everything. I just can't stress that enough. It seems like no big deal, but when you're in the thick of all of it and things get canceled, rescheduled, gigs come up, students are sick, blah, 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 it's just you're constantly dealing with your schedule. So with the concept of moving things around, changing your schedule around to take a gig that you want, you have to do what I've called before risk assessment and know that if you take this one gig that you really want, how much risk are you creating underneath all this stuff that's going to get canceled and changed around? Are you going to be willing to risk losing one of your regional orchestra jobs because you're just going to go over your attendance requirement and go ahead and take this other job and be more or less fired, let go from that regional orchestra? Are you willing to risk that for this one big job? Or if you have one big gig and another bigger gig comes along, are you willing to risk this one going away forever to have this big gig? I mean, these are things you're thinking about daily. So as I said before, everything needs to be in balance. So I mentioned before, risking losing a student if you reschedule them too much. That's something that happens a lot to freelancers, I think. And I like to think I did pretty well in considering my students to be pretty important, and that I wanted to keep teaching. In my mind, it's just not worth it to take that gig if it conflicts with, because usually your schedule is so compact, like every minute of your day is taken up with something. I know several times it had come up like, well, there's this gig, but one of the rehearsals conflicts with my student that I've rescheduled 3 times now. And this time that we rescheduled is the only time in my week that works for both of us. And if I cancel her again, I'm just not being a good teacher. Am I willing to take this gig? Oftentimes be no. So you just have to say no to that and keep your students. So, you just really have to see a bigger picture and know what you want. Again, though, I've mentioned before, if it's like the top gig that you want, the Chicago Symphony finally calls you and it's going to conflict with that student that you've rescheduled 3 times, oh well, like you're just gonna have to decide, what do you really want? Do you want to have credibility as a flute teacher, or do you want to play with the Chicago Symphony? Because it can't be both. And you're gonna run into that a lot being a freelancer. So those are all just things to consider as you're going into a career being a freelancer, just getting an idea of what your life is going to be, and it's going to be dealing with your schedule. That's what you're going to be doing, that and driving. One story I have that comes to mind that I could tell to kind of give you an idea of the things you've got to decide would be, for example, I was, as I mentioned before, teaching this music appreciation class at a community college, and I had been doing it at the time of this story for several years. So like over 10 years, I think 12, 13, 14 years, something like that. And along came a really great gig with a full-time orchestra, and it was 3 weeks in a row or something like that, like at least 2 weeks in a row with this orchestra. But in order to accept that work, I was gonna have to get out of 2 weeks, that's 6 classes, of my music appreciation class, and it was the beginning of the semester. So I decided to risk it. As a adjunct in this day and age, that day and age, it may be different now, but back then I just kind of managed myself, and I would, if I needed to be gone, I would get myself a sub, and I would organize my sub and do everything for the sub and like just get it all organized myself. I believe I was supposed to go through some channel where you put in to approve of a sub, and then it goes to some department to get approval, and then you got to send in like not your program notes, what's it called? Your lesson plan. Like I already knew what I was doing. I didn't have lesson plans exactly, not written out to submit. Anyway, I'm pretty sure I was supposed to do all that, but no one ever did it because it would take weeks. And as you know, freelance gigs just come up and you accept it or you don't. So anyway, I decided to risk getting a sub myself, asking a friend, colleague, another flute freelance person, can you come in? Maybe it was a couple different people, I don't remember now, but I had a couple of my friends come in who were professional musicians, could totally deal with the class, but I had to stay up all night or late at night coming up with worksheets for them to deal with my students, give them the syllabus, codes to the emails, to the key to open the doors. It was so much work to get subs to come in. I just did it without telling anybody. And I thought, well, if I risk losing this job, I was in a position to be okay with that. If I had just started teaching, there's no way I could do that if I wanted to still be teaching music appreciation at this community college. So everything just depends on where you are in life and what you're willing to let go of, possibly. The main conclusion here is that going into a freelancer life, your schedule is going to be very complicated, and you need to be very organized in keeping track of all the different things that you do. And these organization skills truly are basic life skills. So I hope that going over what my life was like, or my scheduling was like, my schedule was like back when I was full-time freelancer, is helpful in just to see kind of how a typical freelancer's day-to-day life is. Please hit subscribe, and I'll be putting out a lot more videos such as this one, talking about skills, essential skills in order to be a successful and long-lasting freelancer. Thanks for watching, and I will see you at the next video.